Everything we do is approached with a train the trainer approach. Our franchisees, their management teams, they should be extensions of corporate. So when I'm teaching them, I'm not teaching them with the goal of retain this information. I am making them an expert so they can teach someone else.
Welcome to The Training Effect, the podcast where we explore how learning systems and training drive business success. I'm your host, Doug Mark, and today we're talking with Corey Criss, Director of Franchise Training at the Dog Stop. The Dog Stop is a rapidly growing, all-inclusive dog care facility, and Corey has played a key role in scaling the business through structured training programs. Today, we're going to discuss how training has helped the Dog Stop maintain quality, consistency, and success as it expands. Let's dive in. When people think of franchises, they often picture restaurants, retail chains, or fitness centers. But franchising is also transforming industries like pet care, where consistency is just as important as any other service-based business. The Dog Stop has built a reputation for high-quality care, and a big part of that success comes down to their training. Corey plays this major role in making sure every location has those high standards. Corey, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Doug. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have this conversation. Corey and I have known each other for a number of years, and we see each other at conferences. But before we get into, really tough questions, I wanted to kind of dive into franchise training. And let's start with kind of your story. How did the world of pet care and franchising come into your orbit?
By accident, honestly. I'm sure I've told you this before, but before I came to the Dog Stop, I was a college professor. I was a professor. I taught English and comp courses for 5 years. And then this little new local idea popped up near my house called the Dog Stop. And they had dog daycare. And I stopped in on a whim one day to see if they sold my dog's food, which they did. I bought a bag of dog food that day, but I also walked out with a job offer. So it was a very unexpected turn that my life, but also a very welcome and exciting turn that my life took that day. I had gotten into a conversation with the owners about, this is such a cool place. What is it? What are you doing? And as they talked about, wanting to bring the best dog care to Pittsburgh, then they started to open up. They're like, and then we kind of want to bring it to the entire country and the world. And I was like, oh, how fun. And they're like, yeah. And with you being a teacher and a writer, and my MFA in creative writing, they're like, we kind of need somebody who could build a training program for us and write all of our manuals and do all of this stuff. Do you think you would do it? And I'm like, I just wanted this bag of Taste of the Wild, but okay. It snowballed very quickly from there. When I came in, it was just, they had 2 locations that they owned. And now we have 38 that are open with many, many more, someplace in lease negotiation or site selection. We have people coming in every month to learn about it, to see if they're interested in purchasing.
That's amazing. I didn't remember at least the details of that story. So just out of curiosity, were you sort of ready to make a change in leave teaching at the time? Or was this literally like a spontaneous thing where you're like, this is a wild door that opened and I had to walk through it?
It was not a jump in both feet situation at first. I continued to teach for another year during my first year at the Dog Stop because I loved teaching. And at the time, I wanted to ensure that passion would translate over to franchising. But I didn't want to give it up fully and give up, my classes and my students until I knew, yes, this is going to work. So I did both for a year before I finally said, okay, I see it. I'm ready. Let's go. I'm done teaching. I'm full in on Dog Stop.
Right. So you kind of got your feet wet before you cannonballed in. So that was good, right? I was thinking about your sort of teaching background and your creative, writing background. And when you first walked into the Dog Stop and you kind of met with them after, just going in for a bag of dog food, was it something about their mission and vision? Was it the people? What kind of, made you, I guess, get drawn to the Dog Stop in particular?
The founders had a huge part in that. Their dedication and their idealism, and talking to them about, because obviously there are other people in our industry, right? We're not the first company to think of doggy daycare. So for me, and I was a dog owner, I volunteered at rescues, I fostered, I have always been a dog lover. That piece was also a part of me. But talking to them and talking about what they want to do with dog care and how we can't create blanket services that's one size fits all. Dogs are individuals just as much as we are. And we need, when we have to approach this as these are members of people's family, we were all dog owners and lovers. We, loved our babies, our fur babies. So figuring out, okay, well, how do we make sure that we're translating that love into a business model? And how do we really provide individual experiences as opposed to you drop your dog off, it goes in a room and it becomes just kind of a number. How do we make it each dog's stay an individualized stay?
I heard you say that word experiences, and I think that that's, something that gets thrown around a lot these days, right? Creating a customer experience, or in your case, like, an experience for the dogs. But this is truly what you guys do as part of your mission is actually building a great experience. And I know that because I've seen all the add-ons that you can add to your stay and things like that. And I know it's, those add-ons evolve as your business grows and changes, but it's wild to me. Like, dog owners are fanatical, right? About like who they work with, who's watching their dog and taking care of their dog. Like, these are their fur babies, right? What I love is sort of the confidence people have when they drop their dogs off with you and your team. I think there's a really high level of, hey, my dog's going to be really well taken care of. And that's hard to get to, I feel like, in this industry. And you guys have done it, and you've done it at 38 locations now. So kudos to you and the team as you grow that out, because it's hard to scale. We'll talk more about that later, but that's a hard thing for sure.
And we're in the dog industry, but more than anything, we're in the trust industry, right? We're building trust, and that training and, all of our policies, that goes to building trust with the clients. And then that extends itself to the dog care.
Yeah, that makes sense why you got offered a job on day one. Right? I mean, because we've got a nugget right there, right? That we're just going to take and we're going to say, look, they're in the trust business. Wow, that really resonated.
Well, this isn't my day one though, Doug. We're 3.5 years in.
I've talked a little bit about the services, and the Dog Stop offers a lot, from daycare to grooming to retail components. How do you approach creating training programs that, could scale in such a diverse and, interesting business model?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge. And I would say the first step for us and for me, very early on, we brought in a franchising expert to coach us on what it is to own a franchise or be a franchisor and to bring in franchisees. And he said to me something very early on, which was surround yourself by people smarter than you. And I have taken that very much to heart because I need to be constantly learning, and I need to also recognize when I am not the appropriate subject matter expert in a certain area of our business. So for us, the first step was, how do we find these key leaders of all of these different services or all the different aspects of owning a business, and utilize them to their full potential to build, take everything out of their brains and build it into a training program. So that for us was the first step. How do we find these training experts, and how do we then translate that?
When I do an introduction of like our team kickoff, I always talk about the fact that like my job is really easy because I'm surrounded by really smart, hardworking people, right? And that just, everything kind of, is a little bit easier, a little bit simpler, a little bit more sort of streamlined when you have these people around you that that you can, again, trust. And I just love what that does to company culture, right? Like, yeah. I think when you're surrounded by those kind of people, and those people aren't afraid to challenge you, which I think is really great. And it segues nice to our next question, which is, one of the biggest challenges in franchising is maintaining the same level of service across all your locations. And this is the franchise challenge in general, I feel like, is that consistency. But a strong brand gets built on that customer trust. The trust comes from the consistency, the same experience each time. So if you have a customer that has an amazing experience at one location, but like a not so great one at another location, the entire brand, takes a hit, and that's the franchise dilemma. So training plays like what I think is a really vital role in preventing that from happening. So Corey, how does the dog stop ensure that every location upholds the same standards?
And I think standardization is the key word there, because while the services themselves should be individual in nature, the training needs to be standardized. And for the dog stop, what I've worked on for, over the past decade is how do I standardize and set all of my franchisees up for success. A lot of that stems with, their first introduction to our policies. So the training program for a franchisee, the typical pathway they take is they start with the prerequisite online courses before they're ever allowed to do anything else with the dog stop. They start with these online basic courses to lay a foundation. And I tell my franchisees, I don't care if you remember everything in it, that doesn't matter to me. This is exposure. We're looking for exposure to concepts that will be reinforced when you come to corporate. And that's a mix between dog stop created content and also outside content as well. I've partnered with other educators. Fear Free Pets is one of our big partners. We're the first doggy daycare in America to partner with them and get our staff certified to be fear-free in the way they act in the daycares, the boarding and the grooming salons. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. If it's somebody's already done a great job, I want to partner with them. So we create this online prerequisite compendium of courses they have to take. Then they come with their management teams to Pittsburgh for a week and work with me, work with our other SMEs, leading their departments. And it's a hybrid experience of in-person experience in the stores where they're shadowing the stores. They're working in a functional store and starting to get a taste of how all this knowledge translates into action. And then when they go away, we have post-training stuff that we do where we fly our field people out there for their grand openings and we're watching them train their staff. Everything we do is approached with a train the trainer approach. Our franchisees, their management teams, they should be extensions of corporate. So when I'm teaching them, I'm not teaching them with the goal of they retain this information. I am making them an expert so they can teach someone else.
That's how you get that consistency at every location, I think, right? Because you're actually empowering someone who can then share that knowledge with someone else that maybe doesn't have their skill set yet, or a new hire or something along those lines. I love everything you had to say there. One thing that it had me thinking about as I was listening to you was that I'm just curious, are all, dog stops the same as in like layout? Or I know they all have like the same services. They do kind of probably vary from location to location, but like, is each one that you go into set up the exact same way or they're uniquely different? So it's really the systems that are like the most important thing.
The layout's not the same. And that, when we do our discovery days for potential franchisees, that's one of the things that we talk about. We are not looking for cookie cutter stores. I don't want complete uniformity. We always say we don't want to crush the entrepreneurial spirit. We want to empower your store to feel like your store, as long as the standard of care and the policies are being followed. And we also try to work with natural footprints of buildings. So we're not going to, inflate the cost of, this sort of retrofit just for the sake of making every store look the same. So when you walk into a store, our store down in Gulf Breeze versus the one in Franklinton, or Bark Public House down in Nashville, which is our sister brand, or any of our Pittsburgh locations, they're all going to look a little bit different. The colors are the same. The logos are the same. The products are pretty much the same. The services are the same, but the layouts are different. And, we always say it's the people themselves who make our stores special.
I love that. Corey, what are some of the biggest challenges in training across multiple locations, and how have you chosen to kind of overcome these things?
I think when you are working in an industry where so much of your staff is part-time, then turnover becomes the biggest challenge. Whether you're restaurant industry, retail industry, whether you're the dog care industry, the turnover of the staff is always a big concern. So for us, how do we combat that? One, I am a firm believer that excellent training reduces attrition, period. when people feel empowered, when they feel as if their employer has a vested interest in how well they perform, and wants them to continue to grow and do better, they stay for that kind of culture. So that's the first thing that I will say. And that's what always is, nearest and dearest to my heart. How do I empower my staff? That being said, there's always going to be turnover. Even if we reduce it, it still exists. So, when you put so much time and effort into this train the trainer approach, how do we then bounce back from losing losing one of those trainers? And there's a couple of different things that we've done. One, we have an open invitation to all of our franchisees. Once they've opened, I do training sessions once a month. There's 1 week out of every month that is dedicated to corporate training. And they are always allowed to schedule, come back, do it a second time, many of which have. Or if they hire a new general manager, they send their manager up for an entire week and get them trained so that they get to make up not having that initial experience with me and with the rest of our team. We're going to be rolling out these plug and play trainings as well for our field ops team. And then those will also be shared with the general managers, which what I'm doing for my departments or that my aspects that I oversee of dog care. I'm a CPR and first aid instructor. I'm also certified in pet nutrition. So I kind of own those pieces. But for all of our subject matter experts, I have everybody creating a presentation with their whole lecture written out, followed by discussion topics and, the answers that we're looking for, followed by some sort of hands-on like kinesthetic experience or exercise that follows. The idea being that I can give these to my field ops people, or I can send this to a general manager down in Georgia or Texas, and they can just follow along and they can just plug this right in and play and do hands-on in-person training in their own store and duplicate what I have at corporate.
A lot of brands that I work with and have worked with in the past do a good job with the initial training, but what they're not, maybe they struggle a little bit with, which is empowering the franchisees to deliver that same training program, right? And I think what you're working on right there is something that I think more brands could benefit from, because at the end of the day, each location is training their own staff.
Correct.
And you want them to follow your standards. So if that's the case, you've got to kind of equip them, right? Give them some tools that they can teach with. And I love what you guys are doing there. That is super cool, Corey.
It took a while because, in the beginning, and especially coming from, I think, the teaching industry and working in colleges where it is very much a mindset of, my success is my success. How well I deliver and I perform. And it is a very solitary type of profession.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. But moving into the dog stop, I really had to retrain my own mindset of their success is my success. My success is not my success. My success means that I am holding on to all of the knowledge and I'm just parceling out in little bits and pieces. And that's not what I want. I need to know that they can duplicate. I need to know that they have been empowered to do all of these things that I can do. And I've trained them well. I've taught them well. And their success then reflects back.
That's a critical one, I feel like, to get to, which is measuring your success by their success. I think we hear this in franchising a lot. I think it's that, if we can focus on sort of unit level profitability, then the franchisor doesn't really have to worry, right? Because the royalties are coming in and they're consistent because they know that each unit is being profitable. You really have to measure the success of your franchise brand by the success of your franchisees. It sounds cliche, but it's absolutely true. It's absolutely real. It's the truth in franchising. And I think the groups that get it are the groups that are really kind of doing well. And the groups that don't are going to continue to struggle until they focus on, how do I make sure that this new owner is wildly successful? So many franchise owners worry about balancing growth with quality control. You want to expand, but you also don't want to lose what made the business successful in the first place. The Dog Stop offers a mix of services, right? Boarding, grooming, daycare, retail, which adds this other layer of complexity. How do you ensure that the customers get the same experience no matter which location they visit?
That's a great question. And it's a multifaceted approach. I have to give kudos to my field ops team because they do such a great job of, and the grueling job of traveling and just being on all the time. Yeah. I get to choose to be on my terms on the days I pick and make people come to me. And so all the kudos go to them for being on and being able to, reenact and, recreate everything that makes us so magical at corporate and doing that on an on-location type setting. The consistency of the training is a big part. Working with groups like Learning Zen and making sure that everybody has not just the same exposure to all of the knowledge, but they have the ability to go back and revisit all of that information as well. And that we can create very clear learning paths for them of, hey, you're coming in, whether you're the franchisee or whether you're a part-time dog handler, you're coming in and saying, hey, this is your path. And if you want to jump over to this path and do that, here are the clear steps that you need to take from point A to point B to point C. So I think that clear communication, very clear processes in place that people can follow. When employees, when franchisees, when they have those clear set expectations, I think that lends itself to their success. It also, I think, takes a lot of the guesswork and a lot of the pressure off of it and allows them to really focus on the customer experience and the experience of our dogs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's a good segue into the next question, which is, just kind of what tools or technologies are you using to streamline training? Obviously, you mentioned Learning Zen, but what other things are you guys doing, or what other apps and pieces of software and technology you're using?
While Learning Zen operates as our LMS, we do use other platforms. SevenTaps is one that we recently signed with. It is an AI-powered microburst learning platform. It does, and it integrates with Learning Zen, which is really great because then it can all, kind of dovetail into this one training experience. But it's great because, I can just feed it a PowerPoint or feed it, a PDF or a Word document or something. It creates just a 2-minute course on introduction to some sort of concept, which we love. We also have built out a DogStop intranet where we have our database library of all of our manuals. Every document that's ever been created ultimately lives there. We utilize Monday to track the progress, Monday.com to track the progress of all of our franchisees during their build outs, during their grand openings, their hiring process, all the things like that. We have preferred vendors for other things that help us consolidate and streamline, like our payroll vendors. Shout out to One Digital. They're incredible. That house all of the payroll benefits, HR support, applicant tracking system. Getting everything kind of consolidated is always the goal. But yeah, all of that works together to create some sort of, a streamlined experience for our franchisees.
You've mentioned some awesome systems. How do you actually measure training success and what impact it has on the franchisee performance and then the brand overall?
Yeah. And then that's a great question. And I think that it's also a little subjective of what success looks like to every franchisee as an individual. I will say for me personally, working in a franchising industry, if my franchisees are validating, other potentials who are calling in and interested in the brand, if they're out there validating because I have, cultivated this good experience or great experience for them, that is my personal pat on the back. Like, yes, I did something right. This is great. When we look at in the store levels, then it goes back to what I was saying before. Are we reducing attrition? Is there upward mobility available? And are we seeing it taken advantage of for our staff as well? So that's another thing, when it comes to training, it's not just having all of the information available, it's having it digestible as well. And the ease of use there is so crucial to it being, to having a successful implementation.
That's a great answer. So, Corey, as a franchise network grows, so do the demands of its training systems as you're, expanding and scaling. What works for maybe 5 locations doesn't work for 20, for 50, for 100. So scaling training effectively means constantly adapting to new challenges and learning past experiences. Mm-hmm. How does the DogStop kind of handle that scaling of your training program?
That's a great question. And, I think when you are in charge of the training department, one of the considerations that I have to make is that the more people I'm training, the more different learning styles I'm having to make sure I touch on. when I'm creating these programs. So part of it is casting a wider net and making sure it's not just, the online, but it's coupled with the corporate training versus the on location training versus ongoing touch-based training and retrainings that we have. But there's also this element of, okay, everything that I need to create, if we're training people on how to do a daycare assessment on a dog and decide if it's going to be a good fit for the daycare, how do I teach that in a way that touches on my visual learners? How do I touch on my audio learners? How do I touch on my linguistic learners? How do I touch on my kinesthetic learners? Every single aspect, every policy we have, every, concept that we're training on, it has to touch, there has to be an element of training that touches on all of those different styles. Or in addition to that, we have to consider, okay, is it virtual versus in person? Do we have formats for both? And then also, do we have formats for solo learning versus social learning? Some people are very social learners. Some people, for me, I'm such a weird learner. As much as I'm an extrovert and I like socialization, if I'm actually trying to absorb information, it has to be dead silent and I have to read it. So making sure that we have stuff that touches on all those different people and all the different learning preferences, and that we're just offering them. I'm always surprised, disheartened, disappointed at how many employees I have who come in and don't know their own learning styles. My goal is to empower. My goal is to create and translate and make everything as digestible as possible.
That's great. All right, Corey, what's some advice that you could give to other franchise operators looking to build a strong training program?
I have a couple of things that I would say there. The first being, you have to be a lifelong learner. For me and for the other people who we have, my background, my bachelor's is in English. I have an MFA in creative writing. Dogs are not something I ever studied.
Yeah.
I have to work to make myself an expert. I have to constantly not just be finding information to pass on to our team members. How do I become an expert? So that's why I've sought my own certifications to offer something, to remain, make myself valuable and have something to offer everybody else. So when all these brilliant people are coming to the table with all these incredible gifts, I'm going, I can do CPR. You have to be a lifelong learner. You have to be constantly seeking out that additional information. When it comes to, building a program like this, and perhaps I'm a bit biased in saying it, I would say you have to have someone running the program who understands how people learn. I don't care if they necessarily understand your subject matter, that can be taught. They have to understand how people learn, and they have to be adaptable. They have to be dynamic, and they have to be, willing to take the criticism of when you create, and which happened in the dog stop. I create this training program and there are people who are going, yeah, but I still don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Back to the drawing board.
Right.
So, that's, I think for me, my background in education, and I'm certified in pedagogy as well. While I was doing my MFA, I was certified in pedagogy at the same time. That has played such a crucial, influential role in my success with the dog stop, because I understand how people learn, and I can use that to really drive the program.
I think having somebody in a dedicated role with a background in training and education, or at least somebody who's willing to learn and explore those avenues, right? Because it seems like in franchising, oftentimes people get kind of put into this role and maybe don't have the background. And the reason why they were put into this role was they have a lot of knowledge about our company, right? Or they've been here a long time, or, I saw what they did with that, when that person came in, but they may not have a training background. And I think a lot of times, franchise brands have maybe don't necessarily set themselves up for success because they don't realize the sort of value of the training program, right? Like what it means to kind of invest in your franchisees and their staff, right? Because like you were talking about this earlier, like the employees can tell when you're invested in them, right? When they feel like you've put time and money and effort into making sure that they understand how to do their job, how they're going to be measured, like that makes somebody feel confident, supported, and much more likely to stay around longer, right? And I think that starts with what you said, which is like having somebody in this position that wants to be in that position.
Yeah. And that's something that we had to learn. And excellence in operations does not equate to excellence in training. And both are equally important pieces of the puzzle and so crucial to have. And I'm not bashing operations. We would not have a business without an excellent operations department. I couldn't do what I do without them.
Right.
They couldn't do what I do without me. Right. There's a symbiotic relationship there. And I think that from what the brands I've talked to before, that sometimes is maybe an early on mistake of, well, this person gets promoted because they're so good at operations. That's great. Let's find a way to make them shine in operations. And somebody else who can shine when it comes to creating a training program.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. Oh my goodness. All right, Corey, we're getting to the sort of final question of the day. I'm going to lead it up a little bit. So franchise owners and operators listening to this episode may be at different stages in their training journey. Some might just be starting to systematize their training, while others are looking to refine an existing program. No matter where they are, there are these key principles that make training scalable and really effective. So for the franchise owners that are struggling with consistency, what's the first step in kind of creating that training foundation?
So the first step is what I just said. Find somebody who can run it and do a great job and has the desire and the interest and the knowledge base to do so. 2, be collaborative. And, I think that is such a huge aspect of, not one person can know everything, not one person can own everything. So collaborating with each other is crucial. I always tell my franchisees, let's start with your strengths. What do you do really well? Let's build up our egos and our self-confidence and focus on what we do well. And then let's identify, where do we have that room for growth? And is that something that has to be created, or do we not have to reinvent the wheel? And there's an outside partner that we can bring in to help us with that, which again goes into collaboration, whether it's internally or externally, but collaboration. And then making sure that there's just consistency in the output, that we are setting clear expectations, that what we are delivering is standardized and consistent every single time. And if we make a change to it, if there are changes made to the training program, to the SOPs, to whatever it is, that goes back to very clear communication, and everybody is always aware when there's any adjustment being made. So collaboration, communication, being honest with yourself where your strengths are, that's, I think, are the first steps.
I think so. What's one training strategy that had the biggest impact on the Dog Stop's growth?
For us, it has been, finding the right people and, finding the right educators to bring in and partner with. I think with my background, we have a director of dog training named Brett Reynolds, who has 25 years in the industry, this incredible wealth of dog behavior knowledge. So finding the right people to partner with has been really big for us. And getting consistent feedback from our franchisees about what they want to see and how they want to see it. And making sure that, I can create a training program that I think is great. I can use my history, my background. That doesn't guarantee a good reception. So you have to be able to, what do your franchisees want to see? What do they want to hear? How do they want it to be delivered to them? Because it's not a one-way street there. And also, I think it's important to remember that, I learn just as much from my franchisees as they learn from me. They bring things to the table. They bring questions. They bring obstacles. They bring ideas to the table that completely change the way the Dog Stop operates. And I think that that's invaluable.
Do you find that you need to ask for that feedback? Is that an important step, like building that into your process versus sitting back and sort of waiting for the feedback to come in? Do you have to proactively go out and get it?
So I do send out a post-training survey when people have trained with me in person. I do send a post-training survey. I mean, this just goes to human nature, really. Some people are naturally more collaborative than others. And some people, everybody has different strengths. Some people love to brainstorm and collaborate and to, just spitball ideas. And those franchisees find me very quickly.
Yeah, right.
And, we'll have these sessions of brainstorming. Others not as much, but they have very different strengths than I do. Analytics aren't my favorite thing. I like big picture ideas. So, I think surrounding myself with both kinds of people has really been helpful.
Thank you. I love hearing that.
Having people like Doug, Mark, and Cassie over at Learning Zen has really helped me.
I want fireworks to be like
Right?
the actual podcast right now. I feel like you have to kind of prod some people for some of that feedback, because those people who are always willing to share are going to be sharing sort of their viewpoint. And I think there's just as valid viewpoints from the people that are a little bit more shy or quiet or less likely to kind of push that out into the universe. And so I think it's important to kind of get both sets of feedback and kind of prompt your audience sometimes, which I know you guys do.
We do. And that goes back to what I was saying in the very beginning about trust. This isn't just building trust with my clients. I have to build trust with my franchisees. No one will learn from you if they do not trust you. If you do not have a rapport with them, if you have not worked to build a relationship with your learners, you have already lost them. So for us, it's, yes, I want feedback, but I have to put in the legwork there. I have to work on a relationship to build this avenue of trust between us where they know that feedback will be well received by me. And it is a safe space to come to me and talk about that kind of stuff. So it doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen by saying, hey, can you give me some feedback on this? There's a lot more legwork that goes in the beginning to get to that point.
And I feel like we've gone full circle. We're back to our, our trust, right? Like, and that's really everything at the end of the day, especially with these relationships. So last question of the day, Corey, what's next for the Dog Stop? How is training going to continue to play a role in the future? How is it going to evolve? What are you guys up to?
So our next big task, while we're always focused on the employee experience, the franchisee experience, the next group of people that we want to really impact are our clients. We want to start client education. And it has always been our belief that anyone who uses the Dog Stop should be a better dog owner because of it, because we are such wealth of information when it comes to animals, when it comes to caring for these dogs. And so we're working on building out a Dog Stop podcast where we talk about behavior, we talk about nutrition questions, keeping our dogs safe, all kinds of stuff. We open it up a lot to our clients to get the introductory questions that we're answering. And we're working on building out in-store training education, going back to what I was saying with SevenTaps, those little QR codes in the front of the store that can give you quick insight into the products that we carry, the services that we carry, why we do things differently at the Dog Stop, and make sure our clients understand the Dog Stop difference.
Well, I truly appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on the show, Corey. This has been awesome. I learned a bunch today. I've got some notes and some takeaways. I think our listeners did as well. Anything like how do our listeners kind of follow you and also get in touch with the Dog Stop if they have questions or want to learn more about your business?
Sure. You can go to thedogstop.com. And learn all about the business. There's, pages on there about if you're interested in franchising, and some contact information there as well. And then our podcast as well. Anywhere you buy your podcast, you can search for the Dog Stop podcast. Give us a listen, give us a follow. And there's also instructions on every episode of how you can submit your own questions. We would love to have that kind of conversation with our clients. We want to put out information that's meaningful. So we want that feedback.
They're easy to get in touch with. Thank you all for listening so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you all for listening so much. This has been a fantastic conversation with Corey Criss about how training plays a crucial role for the scaling of their franchise success. If you'd like to learn more about the Dog Stop, visit thedogstop.com. And if you found the episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to The Training Effect. Leave us a review. That's it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.